In Longlegs, Maika Monroe is a rookie FBI agent hunting down a notorious serial killer, a killer who is played by Nicolas Cage with his crazy factor turned up to 11. So join us as we finally get to look at one of the most talked about horror movies of 2024. Welcome everyone to Screams After Midnight. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Tim. I know what you're trying to do, but that was more of a horse than anything else, if I'm honest.
It was a split-second decision. It was like, do I try to do an impression up top that I haven't attempted before? Sure, why not?
Well, we all know exactly what you chose then, because we lived through that. Welcome everyone. This is a horror movie podcast. We get together and talk about a horror movie we watched. It's that simple, and we're in 2024 catch-up season. Today, we talk about Longlegs, which was definitely one of the bigger horror movies that came out during the summer, directed by Osgood, Perkins, and starring Maika Monroe. Although I'm never sure if I'm saying her name right. I think it's Maika, but maybe Maika?
Now let me call her up real quick and ask her.
Oh, go ahead, right, yeah. Put her on speakerphone so the audience can hear Tim.
Yeah. Hey, Mika, how do we pronounce your name?
Well, if it's not Mika, she's going to be very upset at you. Especially since you've got a phone number somehow. So, yeah, of course, we'll start spoiler-free, as we always do. We'll give you a warning before we get to spoilers. And if you're enjoying the show, please do hit the like button. It helps us out a bunch if you do, if you're watching on YouTube. And, of course, you can get bonus content, including an exclusive episode every month. But I'll tell you more about that at the end of the episode. So this was getting a lot of buzz, a lot of strong opinions. Not necessarily all positive. There was definitely some strong negative opinions as well mixed in.
Oh, really?
With the noise, yeah. There was definitely a divisive reaction to this. I mean, for us coming into it, I mean, we've done some of his previous films, namely The Black Coat's Daughter and Gretel and Hansel, both of which I quite liked and both of which you did not like. So there was definitely kind of an expectation that we might be split on this. So we'll find out. As far as giving like a spoiler-free plot synopsis, I mean, all I can really say is it's set in the 90s and Maika Monroe plays a young rookie FBI agent who's just kind of graduated to actually being an active agent, and she might have some form of psychic abilities which is helping her deduce where killers are, and she gets put on the Longlegs case, which is this case that's been going on for decades with someone who is somehow killing entire families, even though there doesn't appear to be any evidence that he's actually going into the houses. And I'll just leave it at that as far as the synopsis goes, but it's about that case. So it's, you know, some people compared it a little bit to Silence of the Lambs when it was coming out, and I guess it kind of starts a little like that, but I would say it definitely veers into its own territory very wildly as it goes on.
I can see like maybe a little bit of influence or a comparison, but I still think it's like its own movie. Like it's not, sure, it doesn't feel like a rip-off or anything. No.
I think it's just because it's a young female FBI agent and this is set in the 90s. I think that's just all it really is for the most part.
Pretty much.
Yeah, so that's the basic setup of it. It does go places, though, that we cannot even begin to talk about until we get into spoilers, so we'll just leave it there. Maika Monroe, we last saw on this show in The Watcher from a couple of years ago. I just found out that she's doing a vampire movie with the same director as that movie soon.
Oh, was it The Brides, that one?
I think so, yeah. I think one of the... But I think it was Neon who did this movie, who just picked it up to distribute it. I think that's what I read just the other day.
Yeah, I saw she was in that new movie. I didn't realize it was the same director though, but I think I'm definitely intrigued by that. She's becoming quite the horror mainstay, because I mean obviously she came onto the scene with It Follows, which we both have a lot of affection for that. Because that's a very big movie we both like.
Not full on horror, but she was also in The Guest the same year as that, so she kind of burst onto the scene with a couple of movies, and that was a decade ago now, and she's still cracking the horror whip, as it were.
And I feel like there's maybe like a couple other ones, probably not as notable, but like I was like, oh hey, like another horror movie under her belt.
Independence Day 2 was horrific, so
I didn't even realize she was in that.
Yeah, she replaced because
Will Smith?
no, shut up. The president's daughter in the first movie was the actress who went on to be what is it? Mae Whitman? Is that her name?
Oh, sure.
But she went on to be in like Arrested Development and all that stuff. But they didn't want her
She
back.
went on to become that actress.
She went on to become that actress, yes. And so despite the fact that that little girl who was in Independence Day had grown up to be a working actress who's still in things, the makers of the movie said, no, we want a hot blonde as the daughter now, so we're not going to bring her back. We're going to bring in someone else. And thus Maika Monroe was cast. And that you know, like, bit of a sour taste in everyone's mouths from that decision. But yeah, the movie sucked, so I guess, you know, who had the last laugh?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, do you really want to be known for Independence Day 2?
No, you don't. Not that I'm blaming Miss Monroe here for that decision. That she just took a job. I'm not throwing any shit
of
at
course
her.
not. Yeah.
This is the attitude of Hollywood producers. That's all I'm throwing shade at.
Yeah. So I mean, sequel aside, I don't want to go on a big Independence Day tangent, but I do. I just want to bring up really quickly that, man, I love the designs of the aliens in that movie. That is so cool. Like, I feel like we talked before about, you know, there's just like a lot of monsters that just feel very generic, and then how, like, you know, the alien from Alien is just one of the most iconic things, and that, yeah, I feel like there hasn't been a ton of other like super cool, memorable ones, but I feel like those aliens are pretty cool and memorable from that movie.
Okay. All right. But, I don't know if I feel that strongly about them, but that's fair.
Yeah.
All right, Longlegs. Tim, did you like Longlegs?
I'll work on it throughout the show.
Can't wait.
Yeah, so yeah, like you said before, I was really intrigued going into
by the
this.
way, Nicolas Cage is in this. I never mentioned that somehow. On you go.
The also got cut from Independence Day too. I don't know. He's gonna play the president's brother. So yeah, going into this, like you said, I heard a lot of buzz. I heard mostly positive things. Probably like you said, maybe a few you know, negative stuff, but mostly positive around. And so I was excited. I was very intrigued. Like you said, I haven't been the biggest fan of Perkins stuff the last couple of movies. I do think he is like a talented filmmaker, and what I've said about the other movies is that I think they look, you know, gorgeous, like especially Gretel and Hansel. Like, you know, I thought that was just a really beautiful looking movie. It bored me to tears. I just couldn't get into it. And then yeah, same with Black Coat's Daughter. I was like, okay, like, you know, it's a stylish movie, it's trying to do something, but it's just not really working for me. So I was intrigued to see this, but I wasn't sure, like, is it going to be the same thing? Am I going to be like, all right, this is pretty and has good performances, but I just can't get into it. But I'm pretty happy to say I actually quite enjoyed this. I thought it was very stylish, you know, like his other things. There's certainly a look and feel to the movie. It has a lot of atmosphere, and I think the performances are great. Like, you know, Maika Monroe is a great leading lady, and Nicolas Cage, you know, he's giving quite the performance, and there's a lot of stuff to talk about and go in with him.
Like, they found a role where he could just go full Nick Cage. Yeah. And it works, but it's the sort of thing. He's wearing a lot of makeup, obviously. There's a lot of prosthetics on his face to give him a specific look. But I'm like, there's points when he's making high pitched noises where I'm like, yeah, I can just see like the cocaine like bad guy from like Face Off or Bad Lieutenant like peeking through here with this performance. I can like see this Nick Cage that's in there.
There's like, he doesn't do it often, but like once or twice it kind of breaks into like song a little bit, and I'm kind of like, I'm curious if that was in a script, because it feels like a very Nick Cagey thing to do. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot to say about his character.
Did you watch Community?
Yeah.
Right. Remember the episode where Abed has a breakdown because he asked for a class project? He's asked, "Is Nicolas Cage good or bad?" And he tries to answer it, and he has this like weird fit moment where he kind of like starts getting like in Nick Cage characters. I felt like this character that Nick Cage plays in this movie is Nick Cage like having that crisis where he's like, "Am I good or bad?" Oh, like, and then going full Longlegs.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. But I mean, I think it's something that totally works and comes together. I think the story I found very captivating, and I was, intrigued the whole time, and excited to see where it goes. And I don't think it disappoints. Like it's weird, and it has creepy, eerie moments, and then it leaves you thinking. So yeah, I'm happy to say that. Yeah, I'm not going to be the Debbie Downer on this episode, and moan about it. This quite worked for me. I was very pleased.
Very, very nice. Yeah, I mean, I've always clearly been a fan of Perkins' direction and the way he just handles scenes, and the way this movie's cut and paste, and the way it handles light and dark and moments of tension where there might be someone around. Like the main character lives in like a. Honestly, I don't know how she has such a nice place for like the rookie agent, but she has like a sort of secluded like cabin house on its own, and there's just like a shot of it from the outside where you can see the light from where she's sitting at her desk inside, but it's nighttime, so it's just pitch darkness around the cabin, and you can kind of like there's a sense of eeriness to the location before anything spooky even happens. It's very well done. His sense of pacing's exceptional. So yeah, direction is next level stuff in here. I will say the story, like, it always brought me back, and I ended up always being engaged by what was going on. But there was one or two times where it took like a turn where I don't know if I was in love with the turn initially, and it kind of had to win me over by like doing interesting things with its new direction the more it revealed. Because there was definitely like, I thought it was mainly this, but then it sort of was like, oh no, but this is actually a path we're going down now, and I'm like, I don't know if I love that. But then it would do a few interesting things with it, and I'd go like, okay, I can kind of see that you had some stuff to do here. Like it wasn't just like a fluffy path for the sake of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's safe to say that it's not just like a typical serial killer movie. Like there's more interesting, twists and turns to it. I guess. I mean, maybe not twists. Well, I guess kind of, but like there's a weirdness to it that I enjoy, more than if it was just very like straightforward, like something like Silence of the Lambs. That's just like, okay, there's nothing. Yeah, that's like there's crazy stuff going on, but
yeah, that's a thriller as opposed to like a full-on horror movie. Although I know some people will disagree with me there and say Silence of the Lambs is a horror movie. I don't think it is. Typically, if you've got FBI hunting a serial killer, I'm saying that's fallen into thriller. This, despite the fact that it falls into that description, is definitely a horror movie because the way it goes down its paths and where it actually ends up. And despite of that, even just the tone and the way it handles its scenes early on, like just simple things of like her standing waiting for someone and you're just being on the edge of your seat because like, it makes every location we're in feel like, something bad might happen here. There's like a constant feeling of dread kind of permeating throughout.
Yeah, it's all about the execution, and there's a fine line between like thriller and horror, I suppose. But it's interesting. I get why some people might say that about like Silence of the Lambs or something, but I agree. It is more into that thriller kind of category.
Yeah, someone cuts off a dude's face and suddenly it's a horror movie. Weird. Yeah. I feel pretty positive about it as well. I don't know if it's my favorite of his. I think it's one that will grow on me more when I see it again, because of where it goes. Like knowing that from the start, I think will actually benefit it for me. Because this time, like it's almost like sometimes that journey of discovery in some movies is almost a slight hindrance because I don't know what mood to be in for where it's going to go. And I think on a second viewing, knowing where it's going to go, I think I might actually like some of it a bit more.
Well, of course, you have to watch it the second time because, like there's some article that was like, notice the 15 like hidden things that you missed in this movie that like there's like some things in the background that I guess I can't really say without spoiling. But one thing, it's not the movie's fault, but I was a little annoyed by the marketing around this movie. Like obviously we're doing this like months now after it's been out, so all that stuff's kind of died down, but it's one of those things where it came out and like I kept seeing a lot of like quotes and articles and stuff saying like, is Longlegs like the scariest movie of the last 5 years? And like, you know, like, you know, we had 5 people watch this movie with heart monitors and they like almost died, or like, you know, like all this stuff. It's like, all right, like I don't think maybe it works for like normies, but I feel like for horror people, if you say like, oh, this is the scariest movie ever, it's kind of like, it's more of like a, all right, well, let's see. Now you're putting it on a pedestal, you know, like I'm probably gonna be disappointed.
Yeah, it's a challenge almost at that point if you're going to say that. But I do think, you know, as much as it may work for the filthy casuals, like this is something they do for a movie like every few years, like every 3 to 5 years. There's a movie that comes out where, you know, I remember when Paranormal Activity came out, some of the trailers would have like night vision shots of the crowd in a theater all reacting to it, and I'm like, yeah, all right, okay, we get it. I think what I typically recognize when they do it, though, they tend to do it when something's kind of unique, or at least something that we've not had in a while.
Yeah.
And I feel like the way this movie's directed and the way it presents its horror ideas is very unique in art house and kind of in a sort of very eerie, creepy way. And I think that's what's made it stick out enough that they're marking it as, oh, this is terrifying. But really all it means is, oh, it's not being presented the same way that every other horror movie you've watched in the last couple of years has been presented. So
that's why it scares normal people. Like, yes. There's a style.
Wait, no, this is not the same cookie cutter formula that I've become accustomed to. The horror. So, yeah. Which is not to say that I'm defending that per se. It's more just like I'm unfazed by it. I'm just like, whatever. The filthy casuals can be ate up by the market and to their heart's content.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, whatever. Do what you need to do to get butts in the seats. I guess. I want the movie to make money too. It's just like, yeah, it's kind of like annoying when you see that as a horror fan. You're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it's interesting as well as Osgood Perkins has already finished another movie that's coming out next year.
Oh yeah, that's another thing I forgot too. I was really crossing my fingers. I was like, I really want this movie to be good because he has a Stephen King movie coming out next year, so I really want to be excited for that.
Oh yeah, because most Stephen King movies don't suck anyway.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I would like a good one.
Of course, yes. Obviously, I want a good one, but
yeah. And then the last one that came out was Gary Dauberman's Salem's Lot, and I could use a pick me up.
Yeah, we just kind of ignored that on the show, and to be honest, we have too many more interesting movies to check out. Yeah. So
maybe at some point, I'm sure we'll catch up to it because it'll be nice to complain about. But
what's funny is that there was a cheap bundle a couple of months ago, probably during October actually, for spooky season, of Stephen King movies that I got on Apple for dirt cheap. So I've got like 3 or 4 King movies that we've not done in the show, so I've got a reason to want to do them now, just to watch stuff that I bought, including. We've never done Cujo. I own that now. We've never done Graveyard Shift. I own that. What else was there? There was something else.
Well, let's just say 2025 is going to be the year of the corn.
Oh, Thinner. Thinner was the other one.
Oh, Thinner I think would be a good bonus episode.
Oh, it's a bonus, okay.
Yeah. There's a lot to say about that movie.
Okay. Yeah. No, we're not starting Children of the Corn until we've done all the
everything else.
The Puppet Masters was the that's what in my head. Okay. Puppet Master will be swapped out with Children of the Corn once we're done with that.
That makes sense. Yeah, because you know they have to cross over at some point, so we need to get them both.
Yes, Puppets of the Corn, of course.
I mean, there's so many movies and they might have done it already.
It's very possible. Yeah. So just as far as looking, so obviously we mentioned Nicolas Cage, mentioned Maika Monroe. Blair Underwood plays another FBI agent in this. He's kind of like the senior partner.
Was he in anything else I would know? Because he seemed a bit familiar.
He's been around for like decades now. Okay. He's one of those guys that pops up in things, and I couldn't like tell you off the top of my head what I've seen him in, but I know I've definitely seen it. He was in Deep Impact, for example, like 25 years ago.
Okay.
He was also in Gattaca about the same time. Recently,
Get rid of this sci-fi crap.
don't you besmirch science fiction, you son of a bitch. He was in Bad Hair. I don't know if you saw that a few years ago.
Oh, I did. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he's just one of those guys who pops up in a lot of stuff. It was in some episodes of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which I definitely would have seen, but yeah. He's a chameleon. He just kind of keeps slithering in and out of things without me really noticing him.
Yeah, I thought he was really good in this. Alicia Witt, I believe, plays the mom. I thought she was pretty good.
Maika Monroe's character, Lee, her mother, Ruth. Yeah. And then elsewhere, there is a small appearance by Kieran Shipka at one point. That caught me
I
off
didn't
guard.
recognize her. I didn't recognize her at first, and my wife instantly clocked her. She was like, "That's it. That's her."
That's it. That's
her ship star went off.
this. Is she Kieran Shipker?
She likes Sabrina quite a bit, so I guess.
See. This is the second time she's been in like a small role this year, because she was in like a really small role in Twisters.
Oh, okay. I watched that. I didn't think
She's in the opening part. She's in that.
That was her. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
and then obviously, the movie starts with a tragedy that kills most of the characters, and she's one of those characters. But very strange.
And then, and of course, probably, and she was in Black Coat's Daughter, right?
She was, yeah. So obviously she's
okay. So that makes sense.
Buddies with the director, presumably. Last time we saw her in something would have been that Christmas. No, not Christmas. Was it Christmassy? The time travel one.
The time travel one.
Killer time something.
Yeah, that one wasn't Christmas. It was the one after that. That was the.
It's a wonderful knife. That was the Christmas one. Yes, okay.
Yeah. Now, there's so many of those. We're taking this classic movie and twisting the premise thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We've got that straight. But that was it for cast that I was recognizing.
And it's a small, like, it doesn't have like a ton of roles in the movie.
No, it's not that many.
Yeah.
No.
Like there's a few other characters we didn't mention, but it's not like they have huge parts.
No, there's not too much we can say without spoilers, to be honest. So I mean,
it's good. Check it out.
I mean, it's pretty good. I don't know if it's the complete like knockout runaway. That's easily my number one horror movie of the year. That I was kind of like maybe had a little bit of hope it was going to feel that way, but it's very, very good. So I don't want to make that sound negative.
Yeah, I think for me, maybe it feels like a bit more of a win just because, I haven't really liked his other movies, so this is the first time that it's like connecting with me. So maybe a little bit more of a surge, but
it feels like this is him becoming a bit more mainstream, because like his previous movies were definitely a bit more under the radar, and I think this one got a lot more public kind of like spotlight. It was people were talking about it. It was social media bound and all that,
Like, even if like people didn't actually see it, they probably knew the name. Like, oh yeah, that was like a horror movie that came out, right? Like, whereas, if you say like, oh hey, Black Coat's Daughter, I don't think people are gonna be like, oh yeah, of course that movie I know.
Yeah, I think trailers and stuff for his next movie is probably going to say from the director of Longlegs to try and sell it to people, and
for sure,
I think that's a sign that this is sort of him not becoming like a huge star of a director by any means, but certainly enough in the horror crowd that they're going to use it to market future movies.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
good.
That's good. He's got like another movie which apparently is also in post production, which I can't. But like, how many movies did he shoot back to back?
That's crazy.
and be ready for. But apparently, I don't know if it's a horror movie. I mean, let's find out. It's called Keeper. There's no year attached to it yet. But it's got Tatiana Maslany in it. Who I think she's in the Monkey movie as well.
I believe so. Yeah.
Which is the Stephen King one we were mentioning. But there's not a lot. It is a horror movie though. During an anniversary getaway at a remote cabin, a wife is left alone after her husband departs, only to confront a sinister presence that exposes the cabin's chilling past. So
like a cabin movie.
It's another horror movie. Yeah, starring Tatiana Maslany. So that's cool.
I guess we'll just be getting our annual Perkins movies every year.
I mean, it says it's in post-production IMDb. That may not be completely reliable, but let's say they've already shot it. I mean, that makes it a pretty surefire bet that at worst it'll be 2026.
Yeah.
But possibly next year as well. Yeah, I think we just have to do spoilers. I really don't know what to say about this without spoiling where it goes, or
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to talk about in the plot, so I think that's where the meat is gonna be.
Yes, and there's definitely an ending that's open to interpretation.
Sure.
There's some ambiguity, which I know audiences love.
Our favorite.
Yes, they love not having things spelled out for them. That's what the filthy casuals are known for.
If you know, I think a really smart scriptwriter could write a script and they could have a character in it named Amber Guity. That'd be a good script.
I think you took too many lessons from that Silent Night Deadly Night Part 5, where there was a character called Joe Petto and Pino.
His son Pino.
His son Pino, which is not short for Pinocchio, of course not. Why would it be short for Pinocchio? Bloody hell. Alright, so spoilers for Longlegs. You have been warned, everyone. Again, the horse of Christmas Past just keeps rearing its head. Because we're just for a little behind the curtains here, you know, we're actually recording this before Christmas, right? Just because of the way the recording schedules worked out, we're a little bit ahead. Yes. So we're still very much in the Christmas mood, even though by the time this goes out, you'll all be sick of Christmas.
It's true.
Be ready for New Year's.
This year sucked. Next year's gonna suck. Like, just I don't know. Stay disappointed.
All right, with that optimism, let's get into Longlegs, shall we? So let's talk about aspect ratios, Tim.
Okay, I knew this was coming. All right, so yeah, you can do your little spiel. As soon as it started, I was like, all right, well, this will be a 10-minute chunk of the episode.
It's not gonna be that long, but it is interesting just because of like because there's a thematic reason for the. Well, I say thematic reason, not a reason per se, but like there's a thematic link between all the stuff that's 4x3, I guess is what I'm saying.
I do enjoy it. Like I thought it was a good way to, handle the, I guess you would say like the flashbacks or whatever.
Psychic flashbacks, I think, might be a better way of putting it, but
Sure.
And they've got rounded edges, and there is actually one brief scene late in the movie where there's rounded edges on the widescreen parts.
Oh, okay.
Just very,
I noticed that.
Very subtle. It's a very dark scene as well, so it's not actually that obvious to notice. But there's one little moment later on where you can see the rounded edges on the regular wide shots, which was interesting. Because I thought I was going nuts because the opening scene's like one of these flashbacks where it's 4x3 with the rounded edges, and it went to the credits or the opening titles after the sort of jump scare at the end of the scene. It's a very good jump scare as well. That's not a knock, because it's literally just like Nick Cage is like shot from like the chin down, and he kind of like pokes his head into the frame with like a music sting, and that's how it cuts to the title.
I liked whenever they had these scenes, and it was just very creepy the way they show it, and you never see like the top of his face, like except like you said, the little kind of jump scare part at the end. But yeah, I think it makes it that much more creepy that like you're kind of only seeing the like bottom of his face, which I guess it makes sense if it's kind of like from the POV of like the kid or something, like you're not really like seeing the whole thing or something.
But yes, because children, I mean, you've got two kids, they can't look up.
No. That's straight. It's bad for the neck. But
no, I like it as a stylistic choice as well, as much as I'm poking fun. But yeah, so he sort of like pokes his head down into frame with like a sting, and it's like kind of a nice little jump scare. But during the opening titles, when it's all red and the opening titles are coming up, it very slowly is widening to the full wide aspect ratio. But it's so slow and subtle that I sort of thought I was seeing it get wider, but I'm like, is that an optical illusion or am I imagining that? And it wasn't until it had gone so far that I went, no, that's definitely getting wider. So it was almost like am I going crazy game that I was playing with myself during the opening titles. Mm-hmm. So that was fun. But yeah, so the opening is kind of this like ominous thing where it's, whatever like time period it's meant to be in. I think we find out later it's the 70s, but and we find out this is the young version of the main character, but like she sees this mysterious car outside the house where she lives. She goes out to see if she can see who it is, and then we're introduced to Nick Cage's character Longlegs, who speaks very strangely, I'll just say, I don't even know how to describe it beyond just it's strange.
Yeah, he has like, it's, I guess, kind of like a soft, like, I don't know if I want to say like feminine, but it's like a very soft kind of tone, but it's also like, a little off-putting and giggly, and also just like, yeah, the way he's dressed, everything just feels like, he's very pale, and like, I don't know, like there's something about it that just feels like kind of off, and I don't know, I don't want to say like disheveled, but there's just something that's like, oh, this is a weird, creepy, like, presentation of a person.
Is it your birthday, child?
Yeah.
There's like a little high pitched bits that he throws in, and just
like he looks so dry too. Like it just like his skin and stuff. It like everything like looks like pasty and cracked, and it's like, oh man, you need like a drink and some sun.
Yeah. So flash forward after the opening titles to present day. We're introduced to our young agent Lee Harker, who is in a room full of a bunch of agents who are doing canvassing. They're going door to door asking for possible witnesses to a serial killer. This kind of presented as, hey, this is the stuff that all the older agents don't want to do anymore, so this is why all the young agents are the ones that always do this. So you got to go
house to house, knocking on people's doors
and just asking to see, if they've seen anyone suspicious, blah blah blah. And she goes out with this other guy who's another young agent, and I legitimately thought, because the way they glanced at each other in this meeting, that they were going to, like, he was going to be a recurring character that was important, because, do they already have a thing? Is there an attraction here? He is dead by the end of the next scene, so he's not around for very long at all.
Like they're in this neighborhood, and then she kind of instantly, is drawn to this one house, and she has a hunch like, oh, let's go knock on this door. And then good thing the guy knocks first, because pretty much as soon as he opens the door, it's just like blam, like and it's another good, I don't know if you'd call it like a jump scare, but it's like a surprising moment. I was like, oh, okay, like where
it kind of is a jump scare, but it's like a natural, it doesn't feel like a cheap jump scare, because it is actually very serious. It's like, no, he just got shot in the face, like this is a big deal.
Yeah, and Maika Monroe does such a good job of, like, even though, like sometimes you think like, oh, like, FBI agent, like if it was an action movie or something, like she'd be like a badass, like, but you can see like she plays like being scared and terrified like very well, but also like, like she still feels like determined to, like she's not like running away or anything, but you can see her kind of like, like sticking up like to the side of the house, being like, oh shit, like this is all right, this is dangerous.
Yeah, and that's not undersell like the hunch she has. Like she doesn't just have a hunch, like she like stands in the middle of the road, kind of looks around and just like feels something coming from that house and says, it's that one, he's in there, let's call it in. And the guy's like, we can't just call it in because you've just like had a like a psychic touch, like we have to go and actually talk, but I'll go and ring the door. So it also adds that little thing where she might even feel a little bit guilty that she's the one who kind of said, go and ask this guy. And when she goes in and she's sort of like nervously going around with her gun up, she eventually finds the guy in the house just up in the bedroom with his hands up, just kind of staring there before he kills himself, right?
Yeah.
So it's this shocking thing, and basically, like, the other agent, we meet Agent Carter, which is kind of annoying that he's called Agent Carter because that's a Marvel character, but
that's true.
But he is like, so how did you know that the perp was in the house? And she's like, I don't know, I just knew, I just felt it. And he even just outright says, like, have you ever had like psychic abilities before? And she's like, kinda, here or there. And he's like, well, half psychic then, I guess. I mean, but that's something to work with. So I was like, oh, is this what this movie's about? Is that she because she's kind of psychic, she's very useful for like dealing with these types of cases, and she's going to help with a really bad one? Because at this point, like, I'm not necessarily thinking that the actual killer or the crime is in any way supernatural itself or anything like that, so I didn't really realize that this was an aspect of the movie either, but I really enjoy the way they handled this, because it would be too much if she was like Jean Grey or something where she can like read minds and like move stuff, but
I like that it's just like a little sprinkle of weirdness where it's like, okay, yeah, like I kind of have these hunches or maybe like slight visions or something where it's like, okay, so it's not like you have a superpower per se, but there's enough weirdness there where you have like some type of ability, but it's also not like what the whole movie's about, you know?
Yeah, I think the only little wrinkle that I'd throw in here is the only one that would know that she knew for sure it was in that house is her. Because the one guy she told, oh, I think it's in there, is dead. So while she might have said to, you know, when she was debriefed after all this goes down, I'm sure she mentioned it, but Agent Carter seems to thoroughly believe 100% that she had this instinct and it led to the perp. I mean, maybe the fact that they, I don't know, that it happened so quickly, because you know, it was the second house they knocked on, so presumably it was like, let's say they started doing this at 9 a.m. She probably called this in at like 9:15, so they got to it pretty quick. So maybe that's the proof he needed. But I you know, it's like he's like gun ho to like pursue this like immediately. Like, hey, let's see if your powers can help with any of these others. So then of course he brings up Longlegs, and we start like getting the exposition of the Longlegs murders and what's going on with all that. So I think one of the things that from my quick glance after I watched the movie to see what people were thinking about it, one of the reasons why I think some people aren't as hot on this is I think they don't like that it does take kind of that supernatural turn, because they're presented with this puzzle of like, how the hell is this guy pulling off these murders? And I think some people were hoping there'd be like some sort of like explanation that makes sense where, oh, we're going to see how he's doing this, but it's not, you know, it's not a, like, because obviously later on we find out it's the power of Satan basically that's doing it. But right. Like, I think some people maybe watching this movie are given this puzzle of, okay, every few years, however long it is, this guy Longlegs, a family is killed, but it's always the dad in the family who kills the wife and then the kid or two kids, and then kills himself seemingly. However, there's always a letter left behind, Zodiac killer style, from this guy Longlegs with a cipher in it, and no one's been able to crack that yet. But there's never a trace that anyone, like a third party, was ever in the house. But because of these letters that are left behind, there's like, and because of, you know, all these, like, there's a pattern to all these killings. Someone's doing this, so it's like, okay, that's a compelling mystery. And I think some people maybe are hoping that, oh, we're going to find out how he somehow convinces like the dad of these families to do it or something or whatever. But obviously that's not what it ends up doing or becomes.
Yeah, I guess I can understand that. Like, if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work. But for me, I found, like, just as we're going through the movie and then ultimately what we find out in the end, like, to me, it was all good stuff. Like, I was intrigued by it, and it didn't really disappoint me. I like that it goes kind of weird. And it doesn't feel like I like that it's supernatural, but it doesn't feel like in a cheesy way. Like, it's not like there's a big CGI monster at the end or something like that's kind of eye rolly.
No, like, nothing like that. I think when I talked later about some of the things that were a little bit tougher for me to like pivot to when it pivots, I don't think this element of it ever bothered me. I think because right in the first 10 minutes of the movie we're saying, hey, she psychically could sense that there's a killer in there. That to me opened the door of, well, this isn't going to just be straight, like, hard logic, like, explainable things. There's going to be an element of something else here. So it didn't surprise me that it, like, that was part of it as it went on, you know, like, because that door had been opened already. But you know, I like, you know, maybe that's the problem is that too many people were comparing it to something like Silence of the Lambs. So some people maybe went in expecting there to be more of a grounded explanation to things by the end.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, you know, it is what it is. But yeah, so we find out that also the one thing that links all the families is that they all have a daughter whose birthday is in the 14th of a month.
I don't know if I missed something, but I don't think I understood what the point they were making with the triangle. Like, what was the triangle he needs to complete?
Okay, all right. So this is something that she basically figures out later when she's able to like decode the ciphers and sees when all the murders actually happen, because they don't happen on the 14th, right? I think one did, but they all happen with maybe in a week, either before or after the 14th of the month of the whatever the daughter's birthday is. But basically, she mapped it out throughout the years, and it made like an upside down triangle, which was basically just matching this satanic symbol in the book of.
Revelation.
Well, I think it was the 9 circles of hell she was looking at when she actually saw the symbol. But I think it was all about making that symbol out of the dates. Was this upside down triangle? And there was one left that he hadn't done, so presumably there was one last murder to come, one last family to die on the 13th. Now, I will say this: there is one thing I don't like about the whole birthday on the 14th thing, is that I don't mind that the main character Lee has a birthday on the 14th, because she's not a kid anymore, so there's no like robbed tension of finding out that at some point in the movie. But Agent Carter's daughter, she mentions she's got a birthday coming up early in the film, and no one ever says, not once, despite the fact that he's working a case where the families are always victims whose daughters have birthdays on the 14th of a month, it never once even comes up. He never mentions, oh, my daughter's got a birthday on January 14th.
Yeah.
Like, it felt weird that they would keep that a secret from us, because it's not like... I don't know. It's not like it created a surprise when it's like, oh shit, his daughter's birthday's on the 14th. If anything, it just annoyed me, because I'm like, why wouldn't he mention that and sort of admit that it makes him more scared that something may happen, because this always happens to families who have a daughter who has a birthday on the 14th. So
that makes sense.
Yeah, that one detail annoyed me about that, but it's not a huge deal, but it is something that hurts me a little bit.
Yeah, no, in the reality, like, you would think that it would have been brought up or someone would have mentioned something, but I get, for the movie, they probably want to add a bit more of a surprise or whatever, but...
Yeah, I mean, just even a simple moment where, because when she meets his family, and the daughter's like, hey, can you come to my birthday party? And she's like, sure, when is it? And maybe, like, she'll say the 14th, and then she'll just look up at the, like, Agent Carter to be like, seriously? Yeah. And they don't even have to say anything, they don't even have to acknowledge anything, they just have to give each other a look to say, oh, that's creepy, your daughter's got a birthday on the 14th. That would be all it needs. It's just that little moment. But the fact that they tried to like avoid ever bringing it up just felt really kind of forced to me. But anyway, it's not a huge deal in the grand scheme of things, because so much else of what it does is very effective. And I think one of the big standout scenes for me is, she's been looking at case files all day, trying to piece things together. She meets his family that night. He takes her, like, she's dropping him off, and he's like, hey, come in and meet the family. And she says, do I have to? Which I thought was very relatable. That was funny.
I thought they were like a good team. Like, she's very like not like necessarily antisocial or anything, but you can tell like maybe she's a little weird or reluctant to get close to people. And then once you kind of see her upbringing, and then also I guess the fact that, her partner, which, not like they had been partners for long or whatever, obviously, but he did just die, so she probably has is dealing with a lot of that stuff. But I thought it was like a good dynamic between them, and he's kind of the like, hey, come on, like, let's get a drink, and a bit more like, I'm gonna force you to do these things and kind of let loose or whatever. I like the way they worked off each other.
But she goes home, and this is to me the first sort of like big, like really effective spooky scene in the movie. Is her back at her place, and it's like middle of the night, it's really dark outside, and it really plays with the light and dark of it, and she has this kind of like, it's not two-sided, but there's like windows on two sides of this big like living area she's in where the desk is, and you can see when from the outside you can see right into where she's sitting, and it makes her feel really visible to anyone out there. And there's a whole spooky thing here where after she's on the phone with her mother, which is important in its own, we'll talk about her mother later, but so it establishes that she's got like a weird relationship with her mother, where she's kind of avoiding her and not wanting to go see her for Christmas, blah 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 blah. She hears a knock at the door, and even that's like a jump scare. When you hear that knock, it's like a silence is interrupted by these thuds at the door, and she goes and she looks, and she puts the chain lock up and whatnot, and then she looks outside and she sees like a figure standing over in the woods, and for some reason she decides to go out there with her gun, and I'm like, just stay in here where you've got like points of entry you can keep an eye on, like the forest is so open and scary, what are you doing? And
I know they don't have like cell phones and stuff, but there's so many times where something would happen. I'd like stop what you're doing and like call someone, like just so they know.
Back up. Get some backup out here right now. But she sees this figure. She goes out, and when she's out in the forest, just you can still see her house in the background. And even the moment before this, actually, before she goes outside, there's a moment where she turns the outside light on, so the house itself lights up, but it's still darkness around the edges. It was a really nice visual. It was really well done.
Good.
But when she's outside in the forest, you can actually see someone moving around in her house in the background. It was a really nice visual. They don't draw too much attention to it. It's really nice and simple. And it looks someone like Nicolas Cage in this movie with the long hair and whatnot. And there's also a moment somewhere in here as well. I can't remember exactly when it happens, but you see like a shadowy kind of like silhouette of like a sort of demonic looking figure.
Yeah, so that was the article I referenced earlier, which I guess there was a thing after the movie came out where they're like, oh, like watch it again and look closely. Like I forget if they give the exact number, but I guess there's like a bunch of these kind of hidden shadow. I guess it's supposed to be Satan.
I think it's maybe Satan. Yeah.
But yeah, there's obviously the very noticeable times that we see it, but I guess there's like a lot of stuff like in the background where it's like, oh yeah, if you're not looking closely, you don't see it.
Do you know, there was one actually, so a bit later, I think it was in her house when she's doing something, I don't even remember what, but there was a moment where I think I noticed something in the background. Now, I didn't notice the shadowy figure, but I might have noticed them disappearing, and the reason why I say that is because I felt like all of a sudden I saw lights, like almost as if they turned on, but I'm thinking maybe it was like car headlights that the shadow figure was standing in front of, and I didn't really notice the figure, but when he disappeared, I noticed the light suddenly like sort of pop. So I'd be curious to go back and check that scene if I can find it and see if that's what I was noticing.
Yeah, and honestly, I think this will be a movie I revisit, at some point, because there's a lot of fun things like that. I mean, overall, it's just a good movie. I don't mind watching again, but I think there's other stuff like that will be fun to notice. I do like how they represent this like shadowy demon thing, because it's very simple. Like it's just kind of like a black shadow with like a slight, sometimes on the close-ups you kind of see the eyes, but I think it is like effective and creepy. And again, I like that they don't overplay it where it's like this big thing that they have to fight or whatever. It's like, it's just this kind of creepy thing you see occasionally.
It's left to imagination. I think that's the key to making it feel somewhat grounded, is you don't overly show it. You don't design this creature. You don't design some big Satan. It's just a silhouette with just maybe the faintest impression of eyes, and that's it. So yeah. But the big thing is, though, is when she goes back inside, when she's noticed someone might be in there, she sees a letter on her desk, and it's from Longlegs. So he was definitely here, because there's a letter just sitting there.
I was kind of surprised at like how fast we're getting into it, because I assumed it'd be like a movie where, like we're not going to get that much like, right away. And it feels like it's pretty early on, and it's like, obviously you don't see like Longlegs, like you kind of see that shadow of him in the house or whatever, but like, you don't see like a close up of him dropping off the letter or anything, but I'm like, oh, okay, well, like we're already into it,
Yeah, it's like because right away it says on the letter, don't open till January 14th, which is actually when the movie ends. But obviously she doesn't agree to that. She just gets some gloves out and opens it and tries to maintain the forensics of it for later use. But obviously inside she finds like a cipher, but she also finds like a key to like the cipher. So she decodes what it says, and it says that if you tell anyone how you figured this out, I'll gut your mother, and something about titties. I don't remember what it said about the milk titties, but it said something about milk tits.
Yeah, it was like something about like cutting off the titties or whatever.
Yeah. I don't know if it was a threat to her or a threat to her mother, but he definitely threatened to kill the mother. So she chooses not to tell anyone this, right? She doesn't tell Agent Carter that this happened or that she got this letter, but she does decode other ciphers at the next crime scene, right? Someone's found a new family that he killed that was like a month ago. The bodies have been sitting there, but she sees the letter and starts decoding it, and immediately Agent Carter's like, wait, how did you do that? And she's like, oh, I was staying up all night looking at the things, I figured it out. And she never explains it to him, and then from there it's like, oh, she decodes all of them, and it's just like that's how she eventually gets to the book and the symbol, and like, realizing there's going to be another killing to complete the triangle whenever. But yeah, so like all of this is like your core setup, and it's like, okay, Longlegs is aware of her and knows she exists, like, and he seemed to know she existed long before or very quickly once she's on the case, because she only just got put in this case like earlier today, so this is very, very sudden, which told me that, you know, maybe he was paying attention to that previous crime scene and saw that she had, you know, got involved and maybe recognized her special ability, or that she was affluent in some way to doing this sort of stuff. Obviously, that's not what it turns out to be. It turns out to be that he already knows her and that she's connected to what's going on and she doesn't realize it. And that's actually the part that I had a little bit of a tough time swallowing initially when they start to like reveal that like halfway through the movie. See, when it becomes like, oh no, like she met him, as you know, that opening scene at the start was her interacting as a kid with him, and that there's something tied to her own past about all this that she doesn't remember. That was the pivot where I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm really into that. Like, this is feeling like it's gone into the whole, you know, the villain's got a master plan that the main character is like completely close to, and I don't know if I'm as excited by that. To be fair though, once it got into the meat of it, it started doing some really cool stuff with its various scenes and whatnot. But there was definitely a little bit in the middle where I was like sort of struggling to enjoy that pivot. You know, that was the part that was tougher for me, I think.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, I guess. I probably wasn't thinking about it too much because I just kind of sucked in. But there's definitely ways they could have not stuck the landing. But I think they did a good job with it.
Yeah. So honestly, trying to remember the exact sequence of events in the middle is fairly tough.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if it's kind of the next chunk when they start talking about the camera family farm, and then
the camera family farm and the doll is kind of like the next big stuff we get to for sure.
There's a lot of stuff going in there because it's like, yeah, I was like, you know, we haven't even like mentioned the doll stuff yet. It's like, oh yeah, like these dolls that he makes are kind of a big part of it.
Oh yeah, they're a big part.
Like,
and it's worth mentioning that as we get introduced to the doll, we start seeing more of these flashbacks, and it's almost like, because, I mean, we'll talk about the orbs inside the dolls, but as soon as the doll's introduced, it kind of feels like she has like a psychic flashback to something that she didn't experience, but the doll experienced, or the doll saw like some of this family's life, and she sees some glimpses of it in the 4:3 old sort of film kind of look that those scenes have. But yeah, we find out about this family, the camera family, which is a very weird name, but yes, fair enough. And this is a notable family because it wasn't attached to his killings to begin with, because the daughter had survived. But it's only because she's decoded everything that she's kind of put all this together that they sort of realize, oh, this was one of his. Or maybe they did know it was his because he still left a letter or whatever. But she survived because she was at school when everything went down. And it was this family where the dad had killed a priest who came over and then killed his wife and then killed himself, like a lot of the other murders. But she just happened to not be there. So they're like, okay, is she still alive? Can we go talk to her? Maybe she saw Longlegs. Maybe she can give us a description, blah, blah, blah. And she's in a mental hospital X number of miles away, but closer than that is the farmhouse where all these murders happen. Maybe we should go and have a look there. So they go there, they sneak around a little bit in the barn. One of the messages was referencing the fact that X would mark the spot here, and it leads to the barn. And they find a floorboard with this doll underneath, and it's lost a lot of its hair. It's kind of spooky. They take it to like an examiner. It's almost like it got an autopsy of the doll. Bizarrely, that's what that scene felt like. But there's this orb in it that the guy refers to as its brain, and he kind of jokes about it. But it's just a metal orb, right? Even though it seems to have some weird properties, but it's hollow. There's nothing inside it. Well, nothing physical. We find out later there's something inside it, but that's another thing. But it's when she sees this orb and sees the doll that she sees these flashbacks of some of what happened to this family. And I think it's around here as well where we start cutting to Longlegs, like in like the present day, where it's not a 4:3, so we kind of like know from a filmmaking language that this is present day in the 90s, where he's just doing his thing. He's in his like weird workshop basement making dolls. he's going to pick up supplies at a store and interacting with the girl at the checkout, and it's this girl's freaked out by him because of course he kind of says things weird. He's like, when is your birthday, child? Like, and whatever else he's saying.
I mean, honestly, if anything, I thought that girl was like too brave. Like, if I was working the counter and like that guy came in, like the first sentence he said, I'd like be running in the back. I'd be like, oh no.
Nah, this is one of these younger Zoomers who have been on TikTok their entire life. They've seen some serious shit. They're not fazed by this weirdo.
And like he does this thing where he covers his eyes with his hands, and then he like does like pretends to be like a cuckoo bird or clock or whatever.
He does that in response to her question, because he comes up with whatever he's buying at the hardware store, and she's like, oh, is there anything else you need today, sir? And then he does this thing with his hands where he covers his eyes and goes cuckoo, cuckoo, and I'm like, and she's like, I don't know what that means. What does that mean, sir? Tell me what you want.
Yeah, it's a fairly serious movie, but I actually did find that to be pretty funny. And then I do think it's weird. We haven't done it yet, but it was just surprising me too. I was like, oh, there's like another big like indie horror movie this year called Cuckoo, which I have no idea if the person in that like ever says cuckoo or whatever. But like, I don't know, it's just weird to me that you don't hear it that often, and then it's like, oh,
I don't know. I would say at best it's 50-50 that the word cuckoo even comes up in the movie Cuckoo. It may, but it doesn't. It's not a guarantee just because the movie's called Cuckoo.
Right. Yeah, no, it's just funny because it's like, oh, it's not like an everyday thing, and then it's like, oh, I'm hearing it.
What do you think she's going to do at the end of the movie? Just turn, like, forget about it, Jake. He's cuckoo. Roll credits.
If they do that, I'll Venmo you like $5 if that's how the movie ends.
5? Come on, that's really specific. I think 500's a better figure.
I wish I had $500.
Right, your kids don't need to go to college, Tim. Just send me money. So I mean, Nicolas Cage's performance here is, I mean, obviously his big scenes later on, he basically gets his equivalent of a Joker getting arrested and getting interrogated in The Dark Knight. Right. It's like he gets that scene for Longlegs. But so they find this doll and they're kind of unsure about it. What does it mean? What's going on? And then they go to the mental hospital to speak to the survivor, the daughter who was not killed from this family. And this is the character that Kieran Shipka's playing, Carrie-Anne Camera. Which I'm trying. Carrie-Anne Camera. That's a hell of a name. But there's a meeting with the director, or the manager. I don't know what the official title is. The guy who runs the hospital, right? Who's a very over the top kind of camp individual. Actually, he's got kind of a not like super flamboyant, but just a little bit of a flamboyant kind of tone in his voice, the way he speaks. And he's basically saying, "Oh, this is kind of wild. You're here to see her because." Like she's been here since before I came here, which has been 8 years, and she has been basically catatonic the entire time. She's not said a word. She just stares. She's completely like unresponsive, and yet just the other day, all of a sudden, she just wakes up and starts being normal, or relatively normal anyway. She's talking. She's coherent. She's doing things. And the characters maybe not in the moment, but do point out later that seems to line up with when they found the doll, almost like that, like unburying the doll and opening up the brain and whatnot, like woke her up.
Yeah, and then and there's a scene like when they, that scene when they first uncover the doll, like right at the end of it before they cut to the next scene, the doll opens its eyes. Yeah, I don't know if that's like her awakening.
Yeah, symbolically at least. I don't know if necessarily like directly ties like a physical sense, but yeah, it at least symbolizes it. And the like case, and also not only that, she never had a visitor, and yet she had a visitor like 2 days ago, and then you guys here now, and they're like, wait, who was the visitor? Who came to see her? And when they check the sign-ins, it's the main character's name, Lee Harker, that's written down, and it's like, did anyone check their ID? And the guy's like, that's a good ID. We should probably do that. But no one checks IDs when they're coming in to visit patients.
That's another pretty funny line. Yeah. That's a good idea, but no, we don't.
No. No. Yeah, there's a lot of like interesting developments here, and they go to speak to this character, played by Kieran Shipka, who, while she's speaking, is very ominous about some things she says, and she even like because they say, "Hey, who came to see you? Can you describe him? Like, what was he like?" So on, so on, and she basically says, "Yeah, like I would do anything for him. Like if he told me to kill you right now, I would do it." And I'm like, "Oh, that's ominous." So
yeah,
they don't get.
I think she gets like pretty like graphic too about it. Like some of the things she says, and then yeah, there's like a lot of like kind of vague, creepy stuff. Like I think does she mention like the man downstairs? Or
I think she may mention that one. So there's actually a lot of details in this movie, so it's kind of hard to remember where they all first popped up. Yeah. But yeah, the man downstairs definitely did start coming up around here.
And then again, really good delivery from her. The way she plays it, you know, she's like at first she's like kind of has her head like, you know, sunken down, and then she's like very quiet and deliberate. But then that just makes it like really jarring when she starts talking about like, you know, these crazy things that she would do, you know, if he asked and stuff. And it's like, it's a very effective, I thought.
Yeah, I think she also alludes to a second person, like, you know, she talks about her, or maybe that's not until Longlegs himself. Either way, like, you know, it doesn't exactly give a lot of answers, and they're kind of befuddled by a lot of what she was saying. And even though they're like, "Hey, we found that doll the day she woke up," Agent Carter kind of throws that out and says that could just be a coincidence. There's nothing to really tie any of that together. But
listen, I know you're psychic, but this whole doll thing is one step too far.
Yeah, and this is where it kind of takes the turn where it ties more into the main character story, because this is where Agent Carter says, "Hey, I looked at your file. When was the last time you talked to your mom?" And she's like, "Wait, why do you care that I've been avoiding my mother? What was this about?" Yeah. And he's like, "Oh, your mother phoned in a report of a mysterious person hanging around the house on like the 13th of a month, like in 1970 something, which turns out to be the day before the main character's 9th birthday, I believe they said. So whatever month her birthday is, I think it was like February, March, something like that. The day before this, he was seen walking around. Now they don't know for sure. It's Longlegs obviously here, but he's like, "Hey, your birthday's on the 14th, and a mysterious man was spotted like hanging around, and your mum called the police about it. Maybe you should go talk to your mum and see if she can remember anything." So she's like, "Okay, if I have to." Like, I really don't want to talk to my mother. But she goes home, and we kind of recognize the location from the start of the movie, from the flashback, and she goes in. And her mother, clearly, I mean, it's kind of left open to exactly here, but it seems like her mother is just kind of like staying at home. She doesn't work. It seems like she's maybe, I don't know if like there's anything specific they're implying early on where you're meant to assume maybe she's like just sick or has mental health problems because she's getting older or something like that. But
like, I mean, when she talks, like, I guess it's kind of like a lot of other characters in this movie, but like, she has kind of like a slow, creepy, almost similarly, you know, to Shipka's character, where it's like almost this catatonic kind of drawl. And then, yeah, her house, like, it seems like maybe she's a bit of a hoarder or something. So it's obvious that maybe things aren't going like super well for her. But I mean, I can tell why maybe she doesn't want to like visit her or talk to her all that much.
Yeah, it's funny because there was a moment here after the mum's a little bit creepy and saying, "Hey, are you still saying your prayers?" and whatever else.
Yeah.
Where the main character, Lee, goes to make her something to eat, and she's in the kitchen and she has this weird moment where she looks over at the door that clearly leads to the basement, and there's like a cockroach that crawls out, and she looks kind of ominous at it and just kind of like shrugs it off. And I remember thinking in that moment, "Oh, don't tell me they're going to say that like the basement is where the killer's been hiding out this whole time." And that actually kind of turns out to be the case. But this is kind of like a good example of like that sounds absurd when you first think of it in this moment, like I did. But by the time they actually kind of get to like the explanation of it all, there is actually like a more interesting way they go about it in terms of like, there's a reason why she didn't know this, right, and why this is something that she never figured out or knew about. And there's also a reason why it's the case. It's not just this weird coincidence. There's something else. Like there's a key theme at play that comes out as all the revelations are coming out later, which kind of makes it work in a weird way. Especially since I read like an interview with the director afterwards, where he was kind of talking about how some of what the main character's story in this is inspired by is the idea of like when he was growing up, his parents would hide certain things from him, not in a bad way, but just this idea that you shield your kids from like truths that you think, oh, that'll protect them if they don't know about this part of the world or whatever, and how like in some ways that can be damaging long term. And this character's basically an example of the extreme, where her mother had like shielded her from like so much, like so many like awful things that were going on like around like her life throughout the entire time. So like there's kind of like an interesting reason why she doesn't know about this, but there was a little bit of a moment here where I'm like, oh, don't tell me there's something in the basement that's going to tie to the case. Obviously the mother ends up being very involved in what's going on, but we'll get to all that later on. So
yeah, I mean, like early on I would have never thought that the mom would have ended up being like a major character, like just from those like early phone calls or whatever. But it does a good job of like leading up to it.
Yeah, it's kind of part of that pivot of like, oh, this is so tied around the main character's backstory that like this was definitely the part of the movie where I was still kind of processing that change. It was more when they actually tracked down Longlegs, but I really got back into it and was like, okay, now we're really getting to some interesting, like, just really cool, crazy stuff where his performance is so good at acting like a complete psychopath, and like the characters try to like make sense of any of this, because when they kind of figure out like who he might be, because ultimately she finds like her photograph that she took with a Polaroid when she was a kid of that day, and it's like, hey, this is him, I've got a photo, let's try and find him. And they do. Like there's a whole scene where he's waiting
relatively
for a bus.
Quickly.
yeah he's waiting for a bus, and like all these cop and FBI cars pull up and they bring him in, and they watch a tape of him like being interrogated in front of all the agents including Lee, and he basically starts saying, I want to speak to Lee Parker, I want to speak to her. And then he starts going on about a bunch of wild things, and then he starts singing happy birthday to Lee over and over again, and they pause it and say, this goes on for 24 minutes, so we're just going to stop this now. And of course everyone's like, why does he know who you are, like what's going on here? And she's like, I don't know. I really don't know. And like, much like a lot of the scenes in this movie, it's presented in this very kind of like awkward silence tone that makes it kind of creepy. Like that's something, because we obviously when we're explaining what's happening here, we're sort of doing it very quickly. The movie really like lets the silence play out in between these awkward beats where you're really like, you feel the awkwardness in the room where she can't really explain any of this, and because she doesn't know, she's effectively been an unreliable narrator, but she doesn't know she's an unreliable narrator the entire time.
No, I mean the pacing works for me, and that's something I was a little worried about because again with his other movies I found it to be a bit more boring, but I mean I don't know, I do like this, so maybe at some point I'll try to go back and give the other ones a shot, but or a rewatch or whatever. But like the I don't know if I'd even really say like it's a slow burn, because the movie like it feels like it moves like pretty quick, but I
feel like the scenes are paced slow, but the plot itself has a lot to go through. So there's a lot to. That's
a good way to put it. Yeah. But yeah, like I never like found myself ever being bored or anything, and it just does a good job of like setting the mood and stuff for the scenes.
Yeah, so she ultimately is going to go in and speak to him to try and find out, because she's convinced, and she said this a few times, that someone must be working with him. He must have an accomplice, maybe multiple accomplices, because it doesn't make sense that he's able to pull this off on his own. And she wants. Do you remember
what his like real name was? Was it like Don something?
Oh, it was something Cable, like maybe Cobble. Yeah, that sounds right.
He had like a kind of like a funny name, but it was like oh, like again though that works.
Yeah. Because so she goes in to speak to him to try and like ask who the accomplice is, and I was a little confused here actually, because like Agent Carter kind of seemed to imply that they've got him and he's going to be going away for a long time, so it's done. But the female agent who we'd seen a couple of times in the movie up until this point, Agent Browning's her name, she says that, there's technically no proof that he's ever killed anyone, but we did match his handwriting to the letters. But I'm like, his letters showing up at a lot of like multiple murder-suicides over a 30-year period feels like that's enough to at least have him under suspicious circumstances here.
Yeah.
That's a lot of very specific places that he's left his handwriting.
It would be an interesting court case, for sure.
That's the sequel. Well, it won't be because he's dead. But yeah, so she goes in, and he's immediately excited that she's there, and he starts like saying all various things. He talks about the man downstairs. He talks about a bunch of different things. She asks who his accomplice is. He does at one point mention we laughed about it. She couldn't contain herself when we laughed about you joining. Because he says, the day you decided to join law enforcement, we had a good laugh. She was beside herself. And she's like, who's she? Who is this she you're talking about? Like, who is this person? And he's obviously eluding the question. He's not really answering anything. But he talks about how the day's coming where the beast is going to rise up, from below and whatever. It talks about the day Satan's going to win, blah, 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 blah. I think the real standout, though, is the way this ends, where he laughs repeatedly. He says, "Hail Satan," finally, blatantly says it. And then the scene ends with him killing himself by ramming his face repeatedly into the table. And by the time he's done, his face is pretty mushed up, and you can see sort of wounds have opened up, and
it's a good piece of gore and stuff, which I guess a relatively very creepy movie, but not overall not like a very gory, bloody movie. But this is a nice bit of splatter and practical effects to it. It looked really good.
Sorry, cat was furballing over my shoes. I was just moving them out the way so I didn't have cat liquid and spit in there.
Yeah, that's the worst. In the morning, our bedroom is on the far side of the house, and there's a day or two ago where I just woke up and I heard one of the dogs was making the retching sound, and it's just wow, there's no way I can get you past the hallway and outside in time, so it's I just have to let you throw up here.
You always know they're going to do it because they go they made that noise where you just know they're about to do it. I was just hearing I was like, what's this, Wesker, what are you doing? Anyway,
but I was basically saying it's a relatively not a very gory, bloody movie or anything, but this is a nice bit of over violence that looked really good.
It definitely sold him as the character he is. It sold him just deranged he is. And
it's surprising to that the movie's named after him. He's obviously such a big presence and a character, but this is the end for him, and it's I get we probably still get some of the flashbacks from this point on with him, but he's dead, and there's still a good 20-30 minutes of the movie to go at this point.
Yeah, about that. There's not a lot of them, like you say, because there's a lot of flashbacks and explaining what he was doing and how he was doing it with who he was doing it with and blah blah blah. But it's kind of bold that he kills himself here, because it's kind of hey, you can't do anything to me. I've completed what I was doing for Satan, so I can peace out now. I'm done. So. Yeah, but not only obviously is him ramming his head on the table quite vicious, but even just the shot of her standing back against the wall and the blood spatters all the way over to her. That's a really good shot. I was saying, even with her standing as far back as possible, his reach still gets to her. The blood still hits her. So really nice visual of that. Agent Carter cheers her out and says, "Hey, we had him, and now we have nothing because he's dead." And I'm like, oh, it's not really her fault, right? He's
right, yeah.
She couldn't have predicted that he was going to do that. That was pretty on the extreme end of things. So
he's clearly got a screw loose. It's not he's probably gonna do it anyway. I don't know.
Yeah. So she's going to see her mother again because she needs to like try and find out if like she can like say anything like as a witness about like a possible accomplice or whatever. And Agent Browning drives her to her mother's because she's not going to let Lee drive because Lee's just witnessed this horrific thing and is too shaken up. So that's that. And honestly, the second like I saw them in the car together, I went, Agent Browning, you are so dead. Like, you're about to die. Because the only reason why you would be here at this, because at this point there's like maybe 20 minutes of the movie left, and it's like, okay, all the big final stuff's about to start happening because we're at that point right in the runtime. Because I know how long's left, and I'm like, you are so dead. And it was making me think of a character from House of the Devil who's like sitting in a car and just like quickly dies. Yeah. And it was very much that where Maika Monroe goes into the house and is looking for her mother, and we just see out the window like her mom's got a shotgun and is like walking around to the side of the car and then just blast this agent in the face. Really simple, really effective, and obviously Lee hears the shots, runs out, and is like, what the hell's happening? And sees the dead agent, is freaking out, and goes looking for her mother with a gun out, and finds her mother standing with the shotgun, looking at what appears to be at a distance the young version of Lee from the flashback, until you get a closer look and you see, oh no, this is another doll. This is a doll just like the one they found of the other girl. What the hell's going on here? And then the mum shoots the head of the doll after saying something like, you're now free, my daughter. She shoots the head off the doll. The orb falls out and is clearly cracked open, and you see like black mist come out of it. And as she does this, it cuts back to Lee, and you see black mist come out of the back of her head, basically implying that she's never been psychic. She's just been linked to all these killings because like she's linked to this doll. Like, whatever's this orb that Satan gave the doll maker, Longlegs, seems to like link psychically to like the person that it's modeled after. And obviously it has an effect on everyone else in the house, because as we find out here, it's like, okay, here's the explanation for what was happening in the movie as best I can give it to you, Tim. So
okay, well, let me take a crack at it. So what I gather is so first Longlegs has to make a doll that looks like the child.
Yes.
And he puts this orb in the head, which, like we said before, it's kind of like the brain, and he puts a little of himself in the orb.
No, I think it's a little bit of Satan in the orb.
A little bit of Satan.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think when the mum said a little bit of himself, she wasn't talking about Longlegs. She was talking about a little bit of Satan. Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah. And then the doll has to be delivered to the house, which that's where the mom comes in, because in order to spare Lee, she had to agree to be this kind of, which makes sense. She's more unassuming than if Longlegs goes to your house.
It goes back to that opening flashback, and we basically see that she ultimately ended up making a deal with Longlegs to say, hey, spare my daughter and I will help you achieve this for Satan. And she became the accomplice. So I don't know if this was the first time he tried to do this or if it was like one of the first, but from that point on, for the rest of the murders, he had Lee's mother as the accomplice, who would go dressed as a nun to the front door of houses with the package with a doll in it and say, hey, you want a prize from the church? Because that's the other thing here. All the families are all Christian families, which makes sense, I guess. Satan would want to target them because
it makes sense.
Yeah.
And then, so once the doll is in your house, I guess it can infect. I guess it infects like everybody, right?
I think there's like a psychic link to the child it's based after, but I think it influences everyone kind of Amityville horror style.
Yeah. It seems to be like the dad usually becomes the aggressor that kills people, but the mom seemed to be getting a little freaky as well. But wait, sorry. So are we missing anything else here? I mean, that's pretty much it, right? It infects everyone and makes the dad kill everyone.
Yeah, that's the basic gist of it. And we see
so wait, there's one thing here that I wasn't sure, because I think they mentioned something like, and then the mom has to stay there to witness it.
Yeah, she has to
Like-
stay and witness the murders to just make sure it goes off the way it's supposed to. So
Yeah.
so throughout all these murders, she has stayed and watched it all happen every time.
I wasn't exactly sure if there's a reason for that, or like when they say like, yeah, it goes off how it should. I don't know, like I don't know, maybe I'm thinking too hard about it. Like I don't know if that meant like that there's a specific order that the murders have to happen, or if there's like a specific way they have to be done. I wasn't sure what the significance of her needing to witness it and what it means for it to be done in a specific way, but I don't know. Maybe I'm overthinking it. It's just like, well, she just kind of has to be there.
I think you're overthinking it. I think it's just to make sure it works, is basically it. It's just
Okay,
like,
yeah.
it actually happens, the dad kills the family, then himself.
Okay.
And,
Yeah,
and presumably she also leaves the letter that Longlegs has written.
right. Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. I mean, it's like anything. Sometimes you buy like something that's a dud. It's like, oh, hey, this video game has a scratch on it. It's not working or whatever. Like, maybe that happens with the balls sometimes. So that has to be someone there being like, oh, wait, it's a defective one.
I don't know, maybe because she's like pledged allegiance to Satan, Satan can watch through her or something. I don't know. Like, I'm just.
Now, I'm curious if like there was something off about the mom before, or because I don't know, she doesn't seem well, but then I don't know if like if Longlegs or Satan somehow infected her too, that would make her go along with this, or if she was just so like devoted to her child, or or just had like nothing else that she just felt like she had to do this. You know what I mean?
I don't think we get a lot of her before, because we see her like a little bit when she's like confronting Longlegs and then is tied up by him and she's begging. But we don't. Most of what we get of the mom is after she's made this deal, and in most cases, much after. It's the present day stuff where she's been doing this for 30 years, so she's obviously pretty messed up in the head by this point.
There's one part that I really liked where I think early on, when Lee, first comes to visit her, I think she asks her something about if she remembers the visitor, and she kind of gives this answer where she talks about like, oh, like no one came to visit us, no family, no friends, no like big bad wolves or whatever. And then I like during like one of the flashbacks, I think around this time, they show her like saying the same thing, but it's like when she was a child and they're like in bed and she's kind of telling her this story like about this man. And I just thought it was like really creepy how, like she's saying the same thing, but now there's like so much more context.
Yeah, well, this is when everything's being revealed to her, and she's kind of getting all these like flashbacks, like kind of delivered to her head. Because one of the other things that's important to mention here is that the reason why she didn't know about any of this or never found this stuff in the basement where Longlegs has been living apparently throughout her childhood is because Satan was basically, because of the ball and the doll, which was linked to her, was stopping her from seeing certain things. And the psychic connection she was feeling to make her like pursue certain things or think there was a killer in the house or whatever was this, again, the connection to this ball. Satan was only having her discover things that Satan wanted her to discover. Now, that's something that, like, I'm of two minds about that in one way, because it's almost like a little bit of like a catch-all, like, well, Satan is orchestrating this whole thing, he can do whatever he wants. It maybe takes a little bit of like the element of chance or agency out of it, but I also can't deny that, like, as it's going through all this stuff, and there's like one of the shots where you see the silhouette of Satan again, like sort of behind the couch, this idea that Satan really wanted Lee this whole time for himself, but is like doing all this through Longlegs and through the mom and whatnot. And there's a couple of creepy shots here as well where one of the dolls, I think it's the doll that she takes to the camera household, because we see how that plays out from her perspective and we get to see it all happen. But where it's sitting on the couch and it's got like a black veil over it, or or not even a veil, just like a blanket or something to cover it, and you can sort of just see like through its like the eyes coming through the veil, and it's like really creepy. And then likewise, when you see it from the POV in the flashback of the dummy, and you're looking through its eyes, you're sort of looking through this black kind of like filter of like the fabric in front of its eyes. So there's a lot of like playing with the way the visuals play out, and all that stuff is super creepy. And the whole like Satan has been playing with her whole life because it really wants access to her. You know, it's a little bit insidious, and I do like that a lot. Like, I love kind of like that like angle to things. So I don't hate that, and I don't hate the idea that this is literally just no. Once one of these balls is in the house, it's almost like, oh, they have to be invited in like a vampire. Like, okay, they have to accept the ball, the Satan ball, into their house. Somewhere like the tall man is cackling because his balls are doing all this good work.
It's it's very strange because it's one thing for someone to come to your house and be like, hey, you want to raffle in the church, here's a free doll. It's like, oh, okay, that's pretty nice. But it's another thing to be like, hey, you want a raffle at the church, here's a free doll that looks exactly like your daughter. Like, that to me seems like a little strange.
I mean, I guess that's how they sell it. Say, oh, hey, that was the competition, you get a doll based on your child.
Yeah, it's like, it'd be one thing if that was a competition you entered, but the fact that it's like, wait, so I never knew about this, and someone has like been monitoring my child in secret to like work out how they look. Like, again, I mean, different time, maybe parents weren't on the lookout for that type of thing.
Yeah, do you know how often I get like a spam text or something saying, oh, you've won like a lottery, like a local lottery, send your details here to claim your prize. It's a scam, they just want my details.
I love winning something that I never knew about or entered.
I know,
it's always
so suspect. Yeah, so suspicious. Anyway, so yeah, it goes through a lot of this explaining, and I do kind of love just how kind of like, it's funny that I brought up House of the Devil earlier, because I do think it has some of the tone of that movie, and the
Sure.
the foreboding nature of the idea of the Satanism, and like the just how powerful Satan is if like he ever gets a hold of the world, does feel really like almost like suffocating, like in terms of how it's presented here, which I really do appreciate. And like, it feels like something so like, I think that's like where it gets over that hump for me, where maybe I wouldn't like it going down this path, but the one way that I do like presenting something this kind of overtly supernatural is to present it in a way that's almost like that Lovecraftian sense, where it's something so powerful we mere humans can't comprehend it. So it feels so oppressive and like just too big to even grasp, like in our feeble little minds. Like, I like that feeling. If you can pull that off and make it feel that big, then that's quite special. Whereas, and that's why just showing a silhouette is as far as you should go, because if you show me, here's a guy in red makeup with horns, like, you've lost me there now. Now I'm just seeing a guy in goofy makeup, so I can't take it seriously anymore.
And I like that a lot with Cage's performance too, because I had heard that that I think there's like an angle where he was a Satanist, or they worship Satan in the movie or something like that. So I was kind of expecting, like, for him to constantly be in like, hail Satan, like, throughout the movie or something, but he only really says it like the one time, and it's like, I guess he kind of refers to it like, other times or whatever.
It's more the other FBI agents who have looked into him who say that, oh, he's got satanic ratings, or he's made references to things. And
even like his look, it's not like, the typical satanic look where he's like in black leather and has like I don't know, like a choke collar or something.
He looks more like someone that you'd want to keep your kids away from, not
like he looks like a grandma or something.
Anyway, so this like play, and she she gets all this exposition basically when she's asleep, right? And it's when she wakes up and she's in the basement, like the doll maker's like workshop in her own basement, where the rounded edges are there.
Oh, okay.
Right, so kind of interesting. It's almost like she's seeing like where the dolls are made, and because it's always been like through the doll's eyes, she's been seeing these flashbacks, kind of. Not always really, but that's kind of like a weird, like, either flashbacks or either from the doll's perspectives or herself as a kid's perspective. It's one or the other, seemingly. But she like gets up and she basically has this realization that the birthday that she was invited to early is today. It's, Agent Carter's daughter's birthday, and she's on her way over. She's freaking out in the car, hoping that she'll get there in time. and she goes there, she goes in, only to find that her mother is already there dressed as the nun, and the doll's already there, the kid's playing with the doll, and it's all very awkward, and whatever, and like the parents, Agent Carter's acting a little bit weird. There's a moment where he kind of snaps and says something kind of angry, and then he talks about
it's like, sit down.
Yeah, and he's like, oh, I'll go get something to cut the cake, and it's like, oh, he's going to get a knife. That's not a good sign. And
yeah.
there's an interesting line here actually where the mum says, oh, the mother and daughter are already dead, and they're not actually already dead, but she says, oh, they're already dead, and he's next. So the end of the movie is that Lee, Maika Monroe's character, tries to save the little girl by taking her away, right? Because she hears the dad's murdering the wife in the other room. He comes in with the knife. She pulls out her gun and fires some shots at him to put him down. Big tragic stuff happening. And then her mother starts acting up, right? And she's going to say that this has to happen, blah, 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 blah. And she shoots her own mother, right? Lee turns around and shoots her own mother in the head to stop this. And she's like, all right, I'm going to destroy the doll, right? I'm going to shoot the doll in the head and kill the orb to stop this from anything else from happening. And the movie ends with her trying to shoot the thing, and her gun just clicks as if it's empty, even though she's only fired 3 shots. So assuming it's a 6-shot gun, there should be bullets in here. She tries it a couple times, it doesn't work. And as she's looking down at it, it cuts back to Longlegs. Oh, pardon me. It cuts back to Longlegs in the interrogation room, where he's just laughing, all happy. He makes a funny smile and says, "Hail Satan," and then winks at the camera, and it cuts to the title. And that's how the movie ends. And obviously this is open to interpretation, because what I mean, cutting back to Longlegs saying "Hail Satan" with a smile on his face is kind of a funny way to end it. I think the main interpretation that I seemed to see from a quick little search after I watched it was that people seemed to think that all of this was about putting her through all this hell and eventually killing her own mother so that she would become the new vessel for Satan. She'd be the new killer. Not that she would necessarily make dolls per se, because she doesn't have that skill, but that she would be the one either delivering the orbs or something. That she would be the new soldier of Satan. But
interesting, yeah.
I don't know.
So a couple of things I think is worth pointing out is the first thing that struck me about this scene, which it's all very well done. It's really tense because you know what's going to happen, and it's by the time she gets there, it's already taken hold. Because at first I thought all right, maybe we'll see it slowly start to drip in, but he the Agent Carter snaps right away. He's not even trying to hide what he's saying. He was literally saying get a knife and cut the cake and stuff. But I found it really interesting that she pretty much just lets him go off and murder the wife. There was really no attempt for her to stop it or go after them, which I thought was.
Yeah, do you think it's mirroring the fact that her mother saved her, the child, so she's trying to save the child? It's kind of
it could be
a mirroring thing with that. Because one of the lines the mother had earlier on before we knew what she'd done is she said something really kind of weirdly ominous to her the first time she saw her in person, where she's like, "Oh, you got to grow up. Not everyone gets to grow up. You should be thankful for that." And she's like, "What are you talking about? Most people get to grow up."
And what another word for growing up is putting on your long legs.
I have never heard of that in my life.
One of the first questions after the movie, I know most people are like, "Oh, let me think about that ending. What's going on here?" One of the first questions me and my wife asked were wait, so why is he called Longlegs? And then she went to type it into Google, and she typed in why is he called, and then it auto finished Longlegs. It was the first result. And I guess the answer, I mean, it's a quick Google thing, so who knows if that was the intention or whatever, but it said oh, Longlegs is a term for growing up or whatever, or becoming an adult or something along those lines. Which okay, I guess. But Yeah, so I thought that was interesting that maybe she just feels like everything is set in motion, so there's no way I can stop them from doing what they're doing. Like maybe I just have to focus on the kid now. And then another thing that's interesting is I think the mom says something along the lines of like, no, Lee, you have to let this happen, otherwise like our souls will burn in hell. So it's like it feels like she's still like religious, like she doesn't want to burn in hell, but it's just like no, like I'm still doing this because I want to protect you, like this has to happen, otherwise we're both damned, like you know
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's so much that she's still religious per se, but it's like, well, she believes that Satan exists clearly because of all this, and she knows that Satan, like, this would be breaking the pact that she made, so it's more like there'll be direct punishment in hell from Satan himself if we don't, go, if I don't let this happen the way it's supposed to happen. And then ultimately, of course, Lee shoots her mother when she's getting too involved.
Yeah, and then I thought it looked really nice, like when she shoots her in the head. I guess it's weird to say, but like when she does, like the wound in her head, it's like a bloody circle, but then there's just like a little bit of like lines coming off it where it kind of looks like a cross. I thought that was cool.
It's definitely interesting. It's almost like she was meant to be the first victim, and this pact was made so everything won't be complete until like Satan gets her because she's the one that got away or something. I don't know if that's really what they're going for, but that's definitely something that went through my head at one point as I was thinking about it.
Mm-hmm. And also we didn't really mention it, like while this is all going on too, like the child is just kind of like cuddling the doll. Like I guess it has that hold on her where it's like, oh yeah, you should be scared and like trying to run away or something, but no, it's just like she's like all about this doll.
Yeah, also Kieran Shipka's character committed suicide off camera.
Right. Yeah.
I never mentioned that. Yeah.
Forgot. Yeah. They're like, oh, yeah, because that was another thing they said. Some with like, oh, well, we still have her as a witness or whatever. But she's like, no, like she just jumped off the roof of the asylum or whatever she was at.
Yeah. So there's a lot to take in here at the end, and it definitely ends kind of abruptly in a sense of like it hits you with all this, and you're sort of questioning like her not like having anything left in the gun to shoot the doll with. And it going after like it's like, because part of me is also like, is it just a simple case of Satan won? Like that's it's just as simple as Satan won. She couldn't do anything to stop it, which is a very bleak ending. It's a very kind of like, you can't do anything to stop evil. Evil's just going to keep existing no matter what you do. But I think people look for more meaning because it's like, oh, like it's been tied to her entire life, so it makes sense that Satan like has plans for her or wants to do something specifically with her, whatever that might be. I mean, if I want to try and stretch it to a broader like message of the movie, like is it sort of like a really dark look at kind of like coming of age and growing up and realizing the way the world actually works because she's been sheltered from this her whole life, only to find out that it's this is what it is, and this is like she has to live in this world with all this darkness kind of thing. I don't know. I'm probably reaching maybe a bit too far with that, but
sure, and maybe there's something there where it's like, your parents shield you from this stuff, and then once you find out, you're like, well, I'm not going to make those same mistakes. But then you realize as you grow up, you're kind of powerless. So you're like, oh no, like, yeah, I can't save the child that, I was hoping to, or something like that.
Yeah.
Which again is like kind of bleak, but
yeah, it's very, I mean, there's definitely no happiness in this ending. I mean, I think that's fair to say. But I mean, definitely like cutting back to Longlegs for his Hail Satan and the wink at the camera is definitely like got a sense of humor. It's definitely like, hey, we're having a little bit of fun, even though this movie's been dead serious the entire time. This was like a little thing at the end to be able to like, hey, don't be too depressed about this. Like,
yeah, hey, remember Nick Cage? He was fun, right?
It was kind of fun, to be honest. I mean, it was creepy, but fun.
No, yeah, I mean it's a very memorable performance, and it's kind of what you want when you hear Nicolas Cage is in your movie.
Going into it knowing where it's going will help with a few of the pivots for me, I think, and also just the idea that the main character is, she's not a traditional main character in that she's got a goal she's trying to achieve and learn something about herself along the way. Because it does this pivot halfway through where it's not that she's just trying to help with something that's got nothing to do with her by being like a good FBI agent, it turns into being, oh, it's all a part of her life. And I think that's the change that I normally don't like in movies about, like, not even just specifically supernatural horror movies, but even just like when, oh, it's like a detective or something's investigating something, and then halfway through it turns out to be about them. like the entire crime in the first place. Like, I think that type of swerve is something that I like. It really needs to do something cool with it for me to be on board with it. I tend to find it a little bit tired and tropey.
For sure.
But to be fair, this does do some interesting stuff. But I think the interesting stuff was maybe less the fact that it was like her connection to it from growing up, and more just all the stuff with Longlegs and like they're doing it for Satan, and Satan's kind of like goals through it all, and like how it was making families go mad and kill each other. All of that stuff was still super exciting and interesting, so I still had that to sort of really engage with in the back half of the movie, even if there were some pivots to, oh, this is all secretly a part of the main character's past, which is just not. I usually don't like that swerve, but like I say, I think
get that. Yeah,
get into it a second time and knowing it's going that way, I think it might click for me even more than it did this time. But what did stick out though was just how strong the filmmaking is, how well it handled each scene on its own merits. Like I mean, everything's going to come down to like execution. Like, there's so many other people that could tackle the same material and just like make it feel more cheap and generic in an uninteresting way. But I think he's obviously talented filmmaker. So you have on a visual sense it looks really great, and then the performers are really good, and the story is intriguing. So it was all really working together for me. But yeah, I could see it in a much like cheesier generic way, like being very unsatisfying. Yeah, I think the directing, cinematography, the way the scenes are paced out, the performances are all top notch, and then the story for me is where I have like some wrinkles that like, might iron out on repeat viewings, but it's definitely the part that's not as perfect for me. But there's still a lot of stuff in there to like, for sure.
Yeah, this will definitely be one I come back to, which as I get older and we have like more stuff to watch and like less time to watch it, I don't know, like that's always a big compliment where I'm like, I will actually watch this again, versus so many movies now that I'm just like, well, let's go in the old incinerator in my brain. Never need to think about this again.
There's been a few interesting horror movies this year that maybe haven't necessarily been amazing, but like, because like both Immaculate and First Omen, like I think it's weird how, not partly because they're both so similar movies, but my feelings about them are very similar as well, in the sense that I'm like, you know what, neither one of those was perfect, but they were very like had really big swings that I was into, and it was like fascinated by like how they were like what they were doing, what they were talking about, and they had really standout scenes, and I think I'd be into watching both of those again at some point. And I feel maybe slightly more positive on this, but like not like to a huge extent where I'm like, yeah, it's still kind of like a little bit flawed, but I'm really kind of digging it, and I love the swings that it's taken. I love the stylistic choices that it's making, and so yeah. Tim, what was your scene of the movie?
Ooh, very good question. I should have thought beforehand, because like sometimes I feel like the last couple of movies we've done, it's been hard because there just hasn't been any good scenes in the movies. And now it's the opposite, where I'm like, I liked a lot of the scenes in here. I don't know. I feel like I would have to go with like a Cage scene, right? Or maybe not. I mean, there's there's a lot of good ones. Just because I'm having trouble thinking, I'll just say the interrogation scene. But I mean, there's a lot to choose from here.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of easy to pick that one. It's kind of the big standout money moment, because it's the most acting he gets to do in the movie. It's big, it's bold, it's violent. Even her reaction to what's going on is really good. Like it's hard to fault it. I did really like the scene early on, like in her house at night when she like sees something outside. Like that entire sequence I thought was wonderfully tense. I'm still going to go with the interrogation, but I wanted to shout out something else just so that
Very fair, yeah.
I gave something else some flowers. MVP of the movie.
Again, it's tough. I think, it's not a huge cast, but I think everyone does a really good job. I mean, it feels like so easy to pick, Nicolas Cage, but because it is such like a big over the top performance. But I think Maika Monroe does just as good of a job, but it's obviously she's more subdued and not like over the top and wearing crazy makeup and stuff. So, but I think she's great. I think the mom also does like a really good job too. Alicia Witt is like, yeah, I think she's also creepy, but like in a different like interesting way. Like at first, like she kind of seems like off, but it just seems more like, oh, like I guess maybe she's kind of old and that there's something going on with her. But then it is kind of.
I didn't realize she was horror royalty. She was an urban legend, Tim, many years ago.
Oh.
I'll take that for it.
Well, maybe that'll have to be a bonus movie soon.
I'd say the first urban legend would be a bonus. The sequel,
Main
for sure.
Yeah.
Final cut, like I'm not going to give extra. But Urban Legend was definitely one of the big sort of post-Scream like trashy slasher movies, which were all murder mysteries because that was the buzz of the time.
But no, I think she was good, and it's funny because like she's creepy, but it's like within like Cage is creepy from the get go, but she's creepy like within context of the movie. Like the more you find out about her, the more it's like, oh, like you're a little mischievous yourself. But so I mean, that's to say, I think everyone's doing a really good job in this. But I'm still gonna give it to Cage. I mean, it's just he's Nick Cage. He's one of our generation's greatest performers. He always comes to the show with big guns and I don't know what I'm saying, but he's
definitely not our generation. I'm going to call bullshit in that. He is definitely at least 2 generations before us.
But our generation loves him, though.
He was literally in movies before either of us were born. Well, it's definitely before I was born. I mean, you might have been just shot out the vagina, but like,
gross.
Yeah. We're expecting your mother's vagina to come up on this episode, right, Tim? Well, tough.
No, I lost that bet. But no, I mean, his performance is great. It's weird, it's unsettling, and then the makeup and all the choices are just work very well together.
Yeah, I'm going to go with a bit more of a weird pick here. I'm not going to pick a character or an actor. I'm going to say the cinematography is my MVP of the movie. I'm not going to say the DP specifically, just because I feel like it is kind of it's a collaboration between the DP and the director as to like how the movie looks. But to me, the visuals and the way the shots are paced out is like my star of the movie. As good as Nick Cage is and as memorable as his role is, like for me, that's the winner of the whole thing. So I am going to go with that.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a great looking movie. There's lots of nice little tricks, like we're saying, like the stuff he does like with the flashbacks, and then just the way a lot of the scenes are like staged and stuff. Like I think one thing that kind of caught me early on was when she's going into that first house after her partner gets shot, and she just sees him on the bed, and like she just has her arms out like holding her gun. It's just, it looks like the way they try to just make like her arms like look like so long, and I don't know, I just thought it was like really interesting. I don't know, for some reason that shot just really stood out to me. But he's obviously very talented and knows like how to frame stuff and just make very simple stuff look ominous or interesting. So
yeah, something as simple as like a lot of the interrogation scene with Longlegs, he's kind of like low in the frame, like lower than typically you'd have an actor. He's kind of in the bottom half of the frame, as opposed to his eye line being at the sort of the third from the top, kind of, which is what you typically frame a person for. And it just made it feel a bit more unsettling that he's kind of like down low, almost like he's trying to go to where the man beneath is, which is obviously they kept referring to Satan as in the movie. All right, what are you rating Longlegs, Tim?
Oh yeah, and then just another fun thing too, like when the credits come up, they're going I guess like backwards or whatever, like they're coming from
like 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, 7 did that a long time ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's all fun. We're all having fun here. So what, you want to know my rating for this thing?
Yes.
No, I was I don't want to say pleasantly surprised, because I was intrigued by it. It had a lot of good buzz, and I really like, despite my some of my misgivings with Perkins. I do like Cage a lot, and I heard he's put on a great performance, and I like Mike Monroe and everything. So I was excited for the movie, and luckily it didn't disappoint me. I actually liked it quite a bit. Again, everything just was really working for me on a plot level. The story had me hooked. The characters I thought were all engaging and giving good performances, and again, it just looked really good. So I'm gonna give it a fairly high score. I think 8.5 for me. I was very happy with this one.
Yeah, that was about 45 seconds that time, just for the I'm starting to keep track of how long it takes from when you start your rating spiel to when you actually give the number.
Yeah, but then when I don't, like, I don't know, if the episode's too short, then you complain. You're like, you're not talking enough. You gotta talk more.
Tim, we're an hour and 51 minutes currently. So one of the longest episodes of the year. I think we're good.
All right.
It's just a running bit I want to do, okay? Leave me alone. Yeah, I've been dancing between a 7.5 and an 8 in my head, basically since I watched it, and I was sort of coming in here thinking, the conversation will like let me land on one or the other, because that often happens where the conversational, sometimes it'll even like maybe go further than I expected, one direction or the other, but I think I'm just about giving it the 8. I think it'll become a stronger 8 when I see it again. But yeah, I'm going to say 8 out of 10.
Let's split the difference and do 7.75.
I don't know. That's opening a can of worms. I don't do the 0.25s and 0.75s. I got to draw a line somewhere. But yes, that is our thoughts on Longlegs, which went longer than. I guess it's not a surprise, but it's a longer episode.
There's a lot to talk about. Yeah. Slightly longer than the movie. I think the movie's only about an hour 40.
That's true. Something we do all the time on Ace and Collector's Cut. For some reason, we tend to, maybe it's because horror movies tend to be simpler, so we tend to, just over an hour, we tend to start wrapping up about there. But
there's some movies that are more fun to talk about, and then some movies that's like, let's just get this over with.
Yes. I tell you about Patreon now, so if you want to get access to those bonus episodes that you get once per month, that's over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, where you get an exclusive episode every month. Often it'll be sillier movies, but every so often we might do like a more like sort of, we don't really have time to cover this on one of the regular episodes, so we'll slot in an extra 2024 movie, for example. So we did that with The Watchers. We're doing it again in January. In fact, the Patreon vote right now is for what the bonus movie will be next month, and like that is by the time this goes out, that might it won't be quite over, but it'll be close to being over. So there'll be like an extra 2024 movie in January, and that might even be true for a couple of months while we're catching up on 2024 movies. But it's basically some extra episodes, plus $5 and up we also do Even More Screams, where we'll do like a top 5 every month or something like that, or maybe a conversation or a little like sort of think game of some kind. We've done some variations. Top 5s tend to be the most common ones. That said though, for January we'll be doing our kind of now annual sort of like 2025 preview. Well, it's not always 2025 obviously, but in this case it'll be 2025, right. Where we basically just look through all the horror movies that are scheduled for the year and kind of just put where our excitement gauge is on them, and sort of,
that's a fun one.
Yeah, mostly because we tend to discover like half the list tends to be new things we've not heard of yet, which is part of the fun. But
already getting some teasers for some stuff. The trailer for 28 Years Later just dropped not too long ago. I'm sure we'll be talking about that.
We're gonna have to do 28 months later.
Weeks.
Months. Yeah. One was it was month. It was week. It was weeks. Yeah, weeks was the one. They skipped months and they're going to years. And apparently,
filmmakers.
Yeah, apparently the one after 28 Years Later, they've scheduled it for the following January already, and it's called like The Boneyard or something.
The Bone Temple, was that it?
Was that it? Yeah,
I think so.
Are we just giving up the 28 naming scheme? Like, all of it, like, it feels weird to give it up when you've just came back, but whatever. I mean, I'm not.
29 years later.
Maybe it's just like a temporary title because I've not decided yet. Maybe it's just I don't know. Anyway, so if that sounds like fun, you can get access to that on Patreon for signing up over there. You can also gift Patreon memberships for a month, or I think you can gift all the way up to a year if you want to. But for Christmas, give someone a month of Patreon. Why not? It's fun.
It's great.
Anyway, that is the show. Thank you very much for joining us. We do appreciate it. We'll see you guys next time. Keep watching scary movies and have a happy New Year.